Good morning and welcome to this special hybrid meeting of Angus Council. I would remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I've agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking. For any members of the public watching, please note that all the public committee reports, including details of specific recommendations, are available on the Council's website. And I'll go to item 1 and ask our clerk for apologies for absence.
Yes, Provost, we have an apology from Councillor Gall.
Thank you, and we go straight to item 2, any declarations of interest and statements of transparency. Councillor Cheap.
Yes, good morning, Provost. Thank you. Despite this being of significant importance to my home and indeed Angus as a whole, I'm afraid I have to declare a non-financial interest in agenda items 4 and 5, reports 29/25 and 30/25. Nature of my interest is that I'm a trustee director of CGLMC Limited. And as such, I've decided that I will not participate in discussion and voting and will leave the meeting for its entire duration.
Thank you, Councillor Cheap. Thank you. Now this is item 3, with the possible exclusion of public and press. The Council will be asked to consider, in terms of Standing Order 27 in brackets 2, whether the public and press should be excluded during the consideration of item 4, so as to avoid the disclosure of information which is exempt in terms of Part 1 of Schedule 7A to the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Do we agree?
Agreed.
We will then move on to item 4, and our clerk will stop the live stream and we will hand ourselves over when that's done to, I believe, Mr. Lorimer.
John, can we stop the live stream, please? please.
Thank you. Item 5, the Carnoustie Golf Future Arrangements Implementation of Phase 1, the proposals. Mr Lorimer.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning again, members. As members know, the subject matter in this report has been covered in detail in quite a number of previous reports. Most recently in August last year, when the public consultation was agreed to be launched, and then again in December, just before Christmas, when the results of that public consultation were reported. So I don't think this report needs a huge amount of introduction. Much of what's in the report is an update and a reminder from previous reports about what is being proposed and the various legal agreements which are required to make that happen. And I hope the summary of what those legal agreements are and their key provisions has been helpful. The full versions of those legal agreements are a lot longer and a lot more technical. So hopefully the summary has been helpful in capturing the main things. As outlined in the report, one of the Council's agreed key objectives for this project is to ensure that the golf courses are available for play by local people at a reasonable cost. And the Golf Access Rights Agreement, this thing that's called the GARA, is a central part of seeking to ensure that objective can be delivered. Now, we know from the consultation results that there is a degree of, I'll call it a degree of nervousness and perhaps some disquiet among some season ticket holders about whether the GARA will deliver that objective. Now, between ourselves and CGLMC, we will therefore be monitoring very closely how the GARA works in practice. And because of the importance of the GARA, I've included a reminder of what works, a more detailed reminder in Appendix 2. I think the only other point I would want to make by way of introduction is in relation to Section 7 and Appendix 3 of the report, and that's in relation to risks. Implementation of Phase 1 does mean some fairly significant changes compared to current arrangements and brings about a number of potential risks. I think it would be true to say that a lot of the work and energy that has been done over the last several months worked very, very hard in relation to the legal agreements to develop and refine those agreements to manage and mitigate those risks. And as officers, we're satisfied that all of those risks to the Council have been substantially mitigated, as explained in the report. Also worth mentioning in relation to risk, there is a risk of doing nothing, and we've explained what that risk is within Section 7. So just in summary, a substantial amount of work, a really substantial amount of work has been done on this, really over the last 3 years, I would say, to reach this point. But this point is the one where the Council is being asked, in light of all that has gone before and all of the work that has been done, to now agree to implement the Phase 1 proposals. And I'll stop there, Provost, for any questions.
Thank you, Mr Lorimer. Colleagues, do you have any questions? No hands up. Oh, sorry. Councillor Meehan.
Thank you, Provost. It's more of a request, if that's okay. I can't see if Mark Davidson's on the call. Is he there? It would be nice, certainly I would be interested, I'm sure other members would, if something could be provided for members on the value of golf to Angus overall. I think that would help us in our future decisions, but that would be helpful if that could be done. Thank you.
I think we'll take that as read then, and we'll move on. I now have Councillor Melville and then Councillor Bell in that order. Thank you. Councillor Melville.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Ian, for that. The report is incredibly detailed, and I don't want to understate the amount of work that's gone into this from Council officers and our partners. I'm looking at the long-term review of the GARA, which is on page 29. Which states that every 10 years, the Council, CGLMC and CGHH will conduct a review to assess if the GARA arrangement remains fit for purpose and access and prices remain fair. I suppose what I'm seeking is your view, your confidence in whether or not that process allows us and CGLMC the maximum amount of influence, and what provisions there are, if you can just set out for us what provisions there are if we become aware that that situation is happening. For instance, if the access and the pricing does not seem fair in advance of that 10-year review, what powers we and CGLMC have to act in those circumstances. Although I appreciate that was quite a long-winded question, Ian.
Through you, Provost. Thanks, Councillor Melville. The first thing to say is that the 10-year agreement will almost certainly sorry, the 10-year review will not happen as part of this phase. So phase 1 has a maximum shelf life of 8 years, but we expect the proposals in relation to phase 2, which is a long-term agreement, to come forward much sooner than that. And as part of that implementation of phase 2, there'll be a natural point at which to review the operation of the GARA. So I don't think we'll be in a position where we need to wait for 10 years before any kind of review mechanism can take place. So I hope that provides some reassurance. There are various provisions. So much of what is in the GARA in terms of any change, whether that's in relation to pricing or access, with the exception of applying CPI increases to prices, that requires a consent process by the Council and with input from CGLMC. I have spoken on a number of occasions with the lead investor in relation to this. The legal agreements are there to kind of, if the relationships are going well, you shouldn't really need to refer to the legal agreements. They're there to say this is how it's meant to work. But we would hope to have a good working relationship with all parties, where if there were particular issues, there would be an opportunity to review those. But there are review mechanisms built into the GARA and a consent process, so that if there was a view that it wasn't working, there would be an opportunity to change that. And as I say, the lead investor has said to me on at least a couple of occasions, if the GARA is not working, then we'll fix it, basically. So that's obviously not a legally binding position. But we do have other elements within the GARA which are legally binding. Does that answer your question, Councillor Melville?
Yeah, I actually have a brief supplementary, if that's all right, Provost.
Go ahead, Councillor Melville.
Thank you. So it's really about who kicks off that review process. Now, I'm aware that officers in the council will be involved in that, but should, for instance, council officers come up with a view that the GARA is not working, does that require any sort of democratic input from us as a council, or is that something that council officers and the council as a sort of corporate body would take forward? What is your view on that? Because I'm just aware that local representatives from Carnoustie, for instance, might have a particular view, and they may be hearing particular things from their constituents about whether or not the GARA is working, and what input us as elected representatives might have in that process.
Getting through you, Provost. I would see us dealing with that, Councillor Melville, as we would with any other matter where, depending on the circumstances, it may need an input from elected members, particularly if there is no delegated authority to officers. That's probably one where we need to do a little bit of further thinking. All of the energy to date has been to put those legal agreements in place. We will need to reflect on how those then become operational, and whether there is any aspects of it we need to make some specific provisions in terms of how the council manages its input. There is an annual part of the requirements in the management agreement is for effectively an annual report, an annual review to be done by CGLMC as to whether the subcontract and all of the bits that are in that are being followed. So there will be a kind of natural annual review process as part of this and reflecting on that. But I think your point around member input is one I would want to take away and do some further reflection on, just in terms of how would we see that working. We've not got to that stage of thinking thus far.
Thank you, Mr. Lorimer. And can I just ask for the forbearance of Councillors Bell and Boyd, just temporarily, while we have two officers, Alison Smith and Mark Davidson, who would like to address Councillor Meechan's points. Can I bring them in, please?
think Mark's going to go first. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. In terms of the question from Councillor Meehan, the economic value to Angus for Gulf is approximately 19.6 million, with an estimated 800 plus jobs created from that and supported. That was based on our last economic impact study around 2016. So that's the sort of numbers that we are speaking about for Gulf, the Gulf industry in Angus.
Come in there.
Apologies, I'm having problems with my microphone this morning. I think Mark's covered the high-level figures. He says these figures are when the last comprehensive survey were done. Obviously, we know since then there have been, there's been more investment in terms of courses and events, etc. So, from the economic impact assessment and also the jobs that are supported by the sector, it is absolutely significant to Angus.
Our thanks to our officers. Can I ask Councillor Meehan if that's okay with you? Or I do see that the leader wants to come in as well.
Yes. Thank you very much for that update.
We probably should just bring this to a close by asking the leader to comment.
Yeah, it was really just to clarify that economic benefit that Mr. Davidson mentioned, that we can assume that is predominantly driven by Carnoustie, I think.
I
don't see anybody saying that, putting their hand up to speak.
That was a question, really.
Mark's going to come in.
Clarification.
Sorry, through yourself, Provost. Yes, it's predominantly Carnoustie, but obviously we have a number of other courses around Angus, but the main driver is Carnoustie and the events that are coming in through that over the past few years as well.
Thank you, Mark. And we back to Alison. Alison, I take it it's still on the same subject.
Yes, it was just really on that. I mean, particularly the events we're looking at since that report was done. We've had the Open, we've had the Women's Open, we've had the Senior Open coming to Carnoustie, and although that obviously benefits other courses and areas, that is obviously significantly based around Carnoustie.
Thank you. Colleagues, can we move on now to ask Councillor Bell and then Councillor Boyd to come in? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Provost. It was under key provisions to know on page 14, just a couple of points, I guess for the benefit of both golfers and elected members. I am not sure what the Burnside course and the Burden Links course standards are currently. I felt reasonable, maybe wasn't aspirational enough, and I wondered if that could be bumped up a bit. I would be keen to make sure it's maintained to as high a standard as possible. And also the following bullet point that no material alterations to the courses are made without the prior written consent of the council. I think that needs to be well enough in advance, not just prior written consent, and definitely not leaving any loopholes for retrospective consent. Would that be possible, Ian? Thanks.
Mr. Lorimer. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor Bell. I think I'll deal with the second question first in relation to material alterations. There is an agreed process set out within the agreement as to how that would happen, and that needs to be done in advance. Certainly wouldn't be acceptable for that to be done retrospectively. I think we've tried to define within the agreement what would constitute a material alteration as well, just to bring some clarity to that. That provision and indeed the next one in relation to playing standards, those haven't changed as part of the new agreements. Those are actually things that are there in the existing management agreement. The reasonable playing standard, as I say, is wording that's there in the existing agreement. So it's been in place, and those words used for a very long time. I would agree that it's perhaps a little bit undefined in terms of what's reasonable, what one person's view of reasonable might be different from another. What I would say in terms of reassurance is that part of the process, there will be, it's actually on the next page, on page 15, CGLMC will be required to provide the council with a courses report in relation to each of the golf courses on an annual basis, and a copy of the RNA's agronomy report. That was a new word for me through this project, on the condition of the golf courses. So we'll be able to manage and monitor year to year the condition of all 3 golf courses, and if there was to be a kind of view that those reports were suggesting a deterioration in the condition, then we would look to address that with the manager. So that it's not necessarily a better defined what does reasonable playing standard mean, but I think we would be monitoring. There's a long history of knowing what the standard is, and we would be able to monitor whether that is being maintained year to year, and if it's not, then seek to take action to bring it back up to standard.
Thank you, Mr. Lorimer. Councillor Bell, is that okay? Thank you. Councillor Boyd.
Councillor Bell beat me to it. I had it highlighted in the report the requirement to maintain the Burnside and Budden Links course to a reasonable playing standard. That seemed a little bit fuzzy. No, that's not the right word, but it didn't seem contractually available right at that point in time. Especially the worries with you seeing in neighbouring councils, Cape Park as an example, closing down. You know, we've got to make sure we have that these standards are maintained. I don't know if you want to add any more to what you said to Councillor Bell's comments, Ian, or not.
Provost, through yourself, just to add, so that the Burnside and Budden courses are extremely well used by season ticket holders, more so than visitors. I would be confident that if the standards of those courses is not being maintained, that the season ticket holders would make that known to those that need to know about that. And you know, so we wouldn't need to rely necessarily on an annual report on the course condition. If there were concerns that were coming forward, then I would expect season ticket holders to raise those, as I'm sure they would do under current arrangements. So you know, I don't think that would be anything different under the new arrangements.
Thank you, Mr. Lorimer. I don't think there's any more questions from colleagues. Can I go to comments, please, to see if anybody has a comment? And I see Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks very much, Provost. I think I'd start by saying I think this is a very good day. It's a culmination of over 4 years' work to ensure that Carnoustie has a chance of hosting the Open in future, and we've heard from colleagues in economic development that the benefit that accrues to Angus. I think our fulsome thanks have to go to officers who've spent a huge amount of time over that period on this project. And Ian Lorimer here, our finance director in particular, has devoted much of his time recently to Carnoustie Golf and the agreements. He's been supported by many others, including legal colleagues, and I think special thanks are due to Andy Thompson, who assisted most recently, but has now left the council. But he did a lot of the legal work in the recent past. This agreement about entering phase 1, which in itself will not deliver anything, but it is a key step to moving into phase 2 and significant investment in Carnoustie by the investors during phase 2. And this will put Carnoustie in a place to anticipate that the Open may return. I think this has been a challenging project to consider for many elected members. Carnoustie is a public asset, and we're proposing transferring control of to a private company who will make the necessary investments. And for me personally, I had 2 red lines. I think the first one is reasonable access for local golfers, and secondly, a financial return to the council. We've talked a little bit about the GARA, and certainly had viewed the consultation that we did in the autumn, and I'm reassured by both of those, both the results of the consultation and the GARA, that the interests of local golfers will be looked after. When we enter phase 2, a financial return will be expected by the council. This is mentioned in the Green Report and at 6.1 in the public report. That's obviously a matter for a future council to manage, not this one. and I would like to ask you to support the proposals in the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. We do, however, have Councillor Proctor, then Councillor Melville. I think, Councillor Boyd, you might have a legacy hand up, would you?
No, it's not a legacy. I maybe do, but I'll come in last.
I'll get you.
I do want to make comment, but please go to Ronnie and Lloyd first. Thank you.
I'll go to Councillor Proctor first, then Councillor Melville, and I'll bring you in last, Councillor Boyd. Councillor Proctor.
Provost, thanks very much. I really can't add much to what Councillor Duff has said. He said most of it, but I'd just like to reiterate, thanks and congratulations to Ian Lorimer and everyone else who's been involved in bringing this sort of very detailed report, today. And it has gone on over a long time. And I was fortunate and privileged to be sitting in your chair at the time, Provost, when the last time the Open came to Carnoustie, and it was a great privilege to attend representing the county, and you could actually see the amount of people and the interest that were taken up, focusing on Carnoustie, on Angus, and indeed in Scotland. And let's get ahead with this. It's gone on for long enough. The ball has rolled down the fairway for long enough. Let's get a drive on it, and let's bring that benefit to Carnoustie, to Angus, and to Scotland. Thank you.
Well done. Can I have Councillor Melville, please?
Thank you, Provost. Yes, I agree with quite a lot of what's been said. Likewise, I appreciate the points made by Ian about the opportunities to review the GARA equity of access and fairness of pricing before that 10-year mechanism that's set out. I think it's really important that we remain vigilant on that. Likewise, I do hope to see a role for us as elected members in that crucial part of oversight of this. I appreciate Ian has said that more thinking needs to be done on how that looks, and I look forward to seeing that come forward. We've heard about the value of golf to Angus, nearly 20 million, largely driven by Carnoustie, and I think we've all got a responsibility, not just to the players, not just to Carnoustie, but to the entirety of the local economy to get this right. And I do think that we as councillors have a crucial role in that. But I'll be supporting the report, and I want to thank everybody for all the work that they've put into it.
Thank you, Councillor Melville, and Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, it's a momentous day for me personally. It's 14 years since I was campaigning to win a by-election in Carnoustie, and at that point in time, so we're talking about a few years, Ronnie, it's been a 14-year campaign for my good self, so it's good to see that this is moving forward. I'd like to thank Ian again, but also Mark Davidson and Alison Smith. Alison, you're going to be a great loss to the council as we move forward, and we've had many conversations over the last few years about how we can get the benefits to not only Carnoustie but to Angus as well. So we've got to get that balance right, and I look forward to working with all three of you for hopefully a considerable longer time than this, but we'll see what happens on that. I also like to thank Ronnie, the previous Provost, always very, very supportive of this. So thank you very much for that. I think it worked out there's been 4 administrations, 5 Provosts and 4 leaders since this was tabled some considerable time before, but it shouldn't go without miss that both administrations have always been supportive. Yes, getting the balance right of looking after Angus, but also what would be fair for Carnoustie as well. That thanks also stretches out to Beth when she was leader of the council in the first 2 years of this administration. She was always supportive of the situation, so thanks should go to that. I think that was all I was really wanting to say, but I fully support this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. If I could bring in...
There was a tiny little thing, sorry, I did scribble down. I really should be thanking my fellow Carnoustie councillors. We've been a fantastic team over the last, oh goodness, how many years. But maybe special mention should go to Councillor Cheap, who has sat on as that trustee. Nobody else wanted that poison chalice in the chamber. And so Councillor Cheap should be thanked for all the work he was doing behind the scenes, that in turn led on that he couldn't be in this meeting today to make comment. Thank you very much. Sorry for interrupting there, Provost.
No problem, Councillor Boyd. We'll now have Councillor Braze. Sorry to keep you waiting, Councillor Braze.
Yes, thanks, Provost. Others have said about all the hard work that our officers have put into this to get us to this stage. And yes, the ECBEV team, I would suggest that as we go forward, they're going to have even more work to do to try and get the best for everyone out of what is the jewel in the crown as far as golf's concerned in Angus. And on that, you know, Angus Council's interest in this is as in our role as landlords, as owners of that links. And of course, that came to us by default. And I think my interest in this is ensuring that we do the very best we can, all of us involved in golf at Carnoustie, to make sure that we give Carnoustie the best opportunity possible of retaining the Open, because it's not just the week when the Open's in town. That's what drives all the other competitions. That's the great attraction of Carnoustie. So this, if we can proceed with this, this gives us the best opportunity. But I'd also like to thank CGLMC for all the work that they've put into this. It's not all just been Angus Council that's got us here, far from it. So a big thanks to them. And at the end of this process, when it's all done and dusted, what I want to see is the golfers of Carnoustie having, relative to other local golf courses, having really good golf courses to play on at a very reasonable cost, because that's what they have to get out of it. They have to put up with the big upheaval when all these competitions are on, because it does affect their access. So that's what I want to see them getting out of it. I want to see the non-golfing public of Carnoustie having good access to the courses and across the links of Carnoustie, and I think we're on track to deliver that. And then when it comes to the economic benefits that a thriving and successful golf offering at Carnoustie can bring, well, we as landlords have to make sure that everyone in Angus gets some benefit out of that. But we've also got to ensure that the Carnoustie people and the trust that benefits from the golf on the links and distributes money to local causes in Carnoustie, that they get an ever-increasing benefit. That has to be the aim, so that everyone benefits. Grow the pie as big as we can, bigger slices for everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Braze. I now would ask Councillor MacDonald, and followed on by Councillor Shepherd. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, thank you, Provost. I'm not going to go on. Everybody said pretty much what I would like to say on various matters. Councillor Melville teased out the GARA questions that I had, so thanks to him for raising it in such a sort of eloquent way. And what I would suggest is that normally Angus Council documents, and this is not a criticism of officers, are quite difficult to read sometimes. And I think that it's actually praising officers that the way that this paper has been drafted and laid out, it is very straightforward to read. So if there's anyone at home that has access and wants to see these documents in full, I would encourage them to go on the council website and look through this particular document, especially if they've got concerns around the GARA and how the various organisations are going to be working, and the way that the sort of overall management reviews, and if I can get the right sort of phraseology that's actually in the paper, the way that the governance arrangements are going to work. I think it's very, very clear from the documents here in front of us how the proposal will be. So a lot of the fears that we've maybe seen over email in the past or through the consultations, I think the way that our officers and Ian and the team have addressed those and laid them out clearly is something that we should really be happy to see. And anybody that, like I say, has any questions on these, it's going to be covered in these papers, I would suggest. So, yeah, for anybody watching at home that's having a look at this, please seek out the documents and have a proper read through, because your questions will more than most probably be answered.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. And I think we finish, maybe, with Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Shepherd.
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, just happy to support the report today. It's not just about golf in Carnoustie. There's also a lot of fantastic courses around Angus, such as Arbroath Golf Links, and you know, the economic ripples from the Open coming to Carnoustie. You know, the restaurants are always busy, and it's great to see the international people that we sometimes don't see coming through in Angus. So, you know, great to be fighting to keep the Open here, and just remember that Angus has got a great golf offering across the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. I don't see any more hands for questions, but I'll go to comments now. I beg your pardon, we've given you comments again. Sorry. Yeah, well, I think we now have to go to the recommendations. A and B are for noting. C is for agreement. And D delegates the authority to the Director of Legal, Governance and Change, or her nominated representative. Can I ask colleagues, do we agree these recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And I think that brings our today's meeting to a close. Can I just wish a happy Burns Day when it gets to it? Remember your immortal memory. Have a wee dram. Enjoy whatever you're enjoying. I know I will. Thank you very much for your support.
John, can we stop the live stream, please?